Welcome, age of vintage society. Judy Holliday was noted for her distinctive voice and her warm, intelligent portrayal of funny and endearing dumb blondes on stage and in film. It is ironic that although she achieved fame by brilliantly playing classic dumb blonde characters, she was in reality a highly intelligent woman with an IQ of 172, well above the level of genius. Einstein was 160. How Judy Holliday portrayed dumb blondes with an IQ of 172. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Judy Holliday won an Oscar for her first starring film role in Born Yesterday, and of her 8 major film roles between 1950 and 1960, 4 were in films now considered classics. She was one star who was subpoenaed to testify about her ties to communism, who was fully supported by her studio and subsequently wasn't blacklisted from movies. Holliday's career was short-lived nonetheless, in part because she represented a highly idiosyncratic working-class urban Jewish authenticity in a time when conformity was being peddled as an equivalent to safety. Judy was also an established and respected performer in several other fields, including music, radio and theatre. In 1957, her distinguished career in the theatre culminated in a Tony Award for her performance as Ella Peterson in the musical Bells Are Ringing. In real life, she was anything but the stereotypical dumb blonde characters she so often portrayed on the stage and screen. In her brief but spectacular life, she managed to leave behind a legacy of laughter, punctuated by a wealth of talent, personality and charm. Blonde movie stars in the 1950s seem to have been pretty much divided between breathy bombshells Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and slim, elegant swans Grace Kelly, Eva Marie Saint. Producers didn't really know what to do with Judy Holliday, a brilliant, versatile actress who simply didn't fit into any easy category. Though she left behind a handful of delightful films, one can't help feeling a sense of waste that her gifts were not better handled by Hollywood, or for that matter by Broadway. Perhaps, like Lucille Ball, Judy Holliday would have blossomed with a really good sitcom, but unlike Lucy, she never got one. Through the early 1930s, Barbara Stanwyck established her reputation in a field overflowing with other young Broadway starlets: Betty Davis, Miriam Hopkins, Katharine Hepburn, Claudette Colbert, Joan Blondell. Barbara was lower-keyed and less mannered than Davis and Hepburn, less glamorous than Colbert. She was real, and she also proved to be the personification of no-nonsense professionalism, making her popular with directors and co-workers alike. Holliday, famous for playing ditzies of accidental genius, here portrays someone more like herself, a smart and worldly woman whose professional life requires her to dumb down. In the role of a soap opera writer, she shines in sharply satirical scenes of live radio and TV drama. She performed in Born Yesterday on Broadway to much acclaim, but still was not considered for the movie for some time. Finally, she was cast by Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and in 1950 she won an Oscar for her reprise of the role. Her career was derailed for 3 years after she was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1952. Your name is Judy Holliday as a stage name, is it? Yes. A professional name? Yes. What other name have you used in the course of your life? Judy Tuvim, Tuvim. Do you have a married name? Yes. What is your married name? Mrs. David Oppenheim. So began the interrogation of Judy Holliday on March 26, 1952, by the United States Senate Subcommittee to investigate the administration of the Internal Security Act and other internal security laws of the Committee on the Judiciary. Just 1 year later, she had won the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Award. In many ways, winning the Oscar was the culmination of her career, although she later played other screen and stage roles. Her life was all comedy, and whose later private life was all tragedy, introduced the word couth to the English language. Born Judith Tuvim, Tuvim is Hebrew for holiday, in New York City, she was the only child of Abe and Helen Tuvim, Jewish immigrants from Russia. Holliday's father was a respected New York civic leader, her mother was a music teacher, and her uncle, Joseph Gollum, was a writer. After her parents separated when Holliday was about 6, she was brought up by her mother's extended family, although later she re-established relations with her father. Mother went to her pupils' homes to teach piano, recalled Holliday, and she also taught WPA classes at settlement houses. She was gone most of the day. My grandmother took care of the house and did the cooking. Between the two of them I usually got what I wanted, unless it was something we couldn't afford. I never had a bicycle or a Girl Scout uniform, but I never really minded. Somehow the explanation that we just didn't have the money for them seemed quite sensible to me. Though she regularly saw her father, she became extremely protective of her mother. Theirs was a warm, friendly relationship. Overcoming great natural shyness, she took part in dramatics and went so far as to write and act in a Christmas play, even though she was Jewish and her grandparents had fled the Tsar's pogroms in Russia. She also edited her school newspaper and won a $50 prize with an essay on how to keep the streets, parks and playgrounds of our city clean. She then attended Julia Richmond, a public high school for girls, graduating first in her class at age 16. Holliday remembered little of those high school years, except that she acted in school plays and had to make up arithmetic in summer school. "I'm afraid I was horribly stuffy about social life," she said. "I guess I was just a natural snob. I got a kick out of being different, and I was eager to improve myself and everyone around me. As a result, I went out mostly with boys who would take me to Broadway shows instead of parties, symphony concerts and recitals instead of dances. I was more interested in writing poetry than passing love notes, and in hearing Bach than dancing to Benny Goodman. I must have been obnoxious." After working briefly as a switchboard operator for Orson Welles' Mercury Theatre Ensemble, she joined with several friends to form a comedy sketch troupe in 1939. Called The Reviewers, the troupe, which included Betty Comden and Adolph Green, began performing at cafes and cabarets in New York City, and later in Los Angeles and on radio. They gradually built up a following and earned positive press coverage over the next year, which allowed them to move to other night spots, including the prestigious Rainbow Room at Rockefeller Center. By the spring of 1940 they had their own radio show on NBC, and they recorded a couple of their routines. As a result of the Reviewers' success, Holliday signed a contract with 20th Century Fox and played bit parts in 3 feature films in the mid-1940s. But she refused to sign without her partners, however, and finally worked out a deal with 20th Century Fox by which she would be signed to a term contract. However, the Reviewers' scenes had been largely deleted. The group broke up, with Comden and Green returning to New York, where they became a successful lyricist, librettist, screenwriting team, Hammer becoming a character in films, and Holliday remaining at Fox. She took a stage name from the English translation of her family name. She was given a one-line part in the movie musical Something for the Boys, and a few more lines in Winged Victory, but by the time the latter was released, Fox had decided not to pick up her option, and she was on her way back to New York. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of the end for the Reviewers. It also gave Judy a first taste of the ups and downs of life as a Hollywood actress. For the next few years, Judy concentrated on the stage, and she very quickly became very well known. Judy Holliday did not star in many films, only 7. The first indication that Judy had a unique quality was evidenced in her part in Adam's Rib. She practically stole the show from Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. It was on Katharine Hepburn's insistence that Holliday got the part as a ploy to ensure that she got the part of Billy Dawn in Born Yesterday, a part she made famous on Broadway. Born Yesterday cast Holliday as a dumb blonde, but that is really an unfair description. Billy Dawn is not dumb, merely uneducated. As the film progresses, we see through Holliday's fine acting a growth of character that an education can provide. On the surface, Born Yesterday is a somewhat standard rom-com, but once you get past the surface, you realise the story is about a woman who everyone assumes is stupid, but really is incredibly smart, just uneducated and ignorant to the world around her. Through Billy's journey we see her come into her own and realise ignorance isn't bliss. The combination of Billy's journey and the film's overall message of respecting and upholding the Constitution of the United States rings especially true in the political climate we in the United States live in now, where big brutes like Billy's old man are trying to go around the law. Holliday was a stunning success as Billy Dawn, and a successful career seemed imminent, but it was short-lived. Her fame brought her to the attention of the US Congressional Committee on Un-American Activities. Just when everything was knitting into place in her movie career, she became the subject of an FBI investigation into allegations that she was a communist. The investigation concluded after 3 months with no positive evidence revealed. Judy was not blacklisted from movies, but she was blacklisted from performing on radio and television for almost 3 years, and in 1952 she had to testify before the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee to explain why her name had been linked to red organisations. She did this successfully and was able to carry on with her career with the backing of Columbia Pictures. The era of intense anti-communist suspicion peaked in 1954 with the so-called McCarthy hearings. In addition to Holliday's sympathy for certain left-wing or liberal causes, Born Yesterday was being criticised in certain right-wing circles as communist propaganda. A lot of background manoeuvring relieved some of the pressure on Holliday's career, and she filmed The Marrying Kind, a comedy drama that was a social commentary on the pressures of the working class. Once again, Holliday gave a stunning performance in a part quite different from that in Born Yesterday. Holliday displayed a wide acting range and proved that she was able to handle drama as well as comedy. Judy's unofficial blacklisting ended with It Should Happen to You, her fourth film with the director George Cukor. Holliday was cast as Gladys Glover, a woman striving to become famous. Gladys wasn't a dumb blonde exactly, she was more of an oddball. Judy took a mediocre script and turned her character into a dazzling kook. Not only is the film adapted beautifully, but Judy gives one of the best comedic performances of the classic era. She was not the first or last to play the smart, dumb blonde archetype, but Judy's smart, dumb blonde stands out from all the others, probably because Judy was an actual genius. In 1948, Holliday married musician David Oppenheim, who was head of the classical recording division at Columbia Records. The couple lived in the Dakota in Manhattan until their divorce in 1957. They had one son, Jonathan. Her last Broadway play, after a series of stage and screen successes, was Hotspot in 1963, while she was in the midst of a 5-year battle with cancer. Becoming a fan of an old movie star or entertainer is one of the most exciting and fun parts of watching old movies. You see this god or goddess from a faraway time grace your presence from your TV or computer screen, and you can't help but just swoon over their talents and looks. However, this can also be a frustrating thing as well. Some stars just don't stand the test of time as well as others, and you just sit and ask yourself why some stars fade into history as some are still literally making history. Seriously, isn't my first love and Queen Marilyn Monroe still making headlines even after being dead for more than half a century? It is discouraging, however, that Hollywood was so shallow that an actress like Judy Holliday succeeds as one character and is forever cast in that mould. Holliday demonstrated that she was an accomplished actress who could display a wide range of emotion and a naive womanly innocence. It was unfortunate that her death was so untimely. It would have been interesting to see Holliday in films that she chose for herself. Throughout that career she moved from triumph to tragedy, typecast as the dumb blondes she hated in movies, turning her back on the theatre. But when she did return to Broadway in Bells Are Ringing, tailored for her talents by her friends Comden and Green, she won a Tony Award. Her last film was the MGM musical version, directed by Vincent Minnelli, in 1960. She died on June 7th, 1965. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Being a comedian has its ups and downs. This was no different from Vivian Vance. Watch this video follow her life from her difficult childhood to her struggles in her career.